opportunity, real quickly, and real quick before I get started, this is probably not for kids. If you're into Game of Thrones, this is your disclaimer. It's got spoilers if you haven't made it all the way up to season 6. If you're not already caught up, I feel bad for you, but you're going to have to turn around because I'm going to talk about some things, and this is your warning. I'm going to separate some things out from books and shows. I'm mainly pretty much focused on the shows because that's going a kind of different route than the books are. But anyway, the hunts are monotonous, so I'm going to take this time and chat. If anybody jumps in and starts watching, if anybody's got some comments, if you have any thoughts about the things that I talk about, by all means leave a comment in the comment section or answer them. And some of my shit is a little heavy on the tinfoil, so just kind of keep that in mind. But let me start by saying that my major season 7 prediction here is, I do watch a lot of theories and videos and along those lines, and one of those things that I agree with lately with the season 7
hit it, Specs.
Season 7 being announced already, its release date in July. A lot of people are wondering what's going to happen. Are we going to see the fall of the wall? What's going to happen? My first and my major and my honest to God, the only prediction I have for this season, no, that's not true. My major prediction for this season, the more controversial one, is going to be simply not even so much has to do with the story, but just how it's going to be told. There's only 7 episodes in the season that's coming up, and then 6 in season 8, with the show progressing further than the books that have been written. My major idea is that season 7 is really going to tie up, the most of what we're going to see is going to tie up the political aspects on the human side, and season 8 is pretty much going to focus a lot on the White Walkers and the battle with the others, and where they came from, what their final, motivations are, what their origins are. We'll get some of that maybe in season 7. The biggest thing I know for that's going to happen with the others is they're going to stomp the shit out of a couple of people coming up into the north side of the wall. The biggest questions in my mind are, what is season 7? How are they going to solve most, if not all, of the political intrigues and the throne game, before the big war? So, on the one hand, we've got several major factions here. I don't have any real order to them, so I'll just start, where I can mentally start at. There's Daenerys sailing in on Westeros and King's Landing. Cersei's basically become the Mad Queen.
Hey, want to hit up the crow's nest?
If you wish to put on
Tyrells are
weight,
pissed off about it. The Sands have taken over Dorne.
I know.
Fuck, they're in league with Daenerys and Varys and all of these guys, and they're all sailing to have some kind of big powwow. The powwow being Daenerys wants to take the throne, and that's what's just going to eventually happen. However, there's the matter of Euron Greyjoy that has to be addressed too. Euron being the uncle of Theon and Asha, or Yara, however you want to look at her. It's one character I universally use 2 names. There's other characters in the story that have multiple names, but for example, like Theon and Reek, when I talk about him as Reek, I'll say Theon as Reek, but I'll just call him Reek. But with Asha, Yara, I can never decide which one it is, so I just fucking go with it. Anyway, one or both of them is going to get caught or killed. I suspect it's going to be Yara. Theon's going to fall back into Greyjoy hands. He's going to be tortured out again, and I don't know. Theon's a fucking infinite question, but the point is that Euron's going to smash a portion of Daenerys' fleet. He's also probably going to take over Dorne because it's being run by some pissed off, angry, bitter ass Olenna Martells and the Sand Snakes, or Laria Sand, and really I just don't see either one of those guys being able to put up a fight. With Highgarden, on the other hand, I think that that's where we're going to see Euron Greyjoy find some unlikely allies in the Tarleys. For example, Randall Tarley, who's probably pissed off that Samwise made it off to wherever he was headed to, the Citadel, which he's already made it to, but he took Heartsbane with him, the Valyrian Steel Sword House Tarley. And Randall Tarley, you know, he's an asshole, but he was a fucking major war. If Randall Tarley finds himself, you know, linking up with Euron Greyjoy and taking over Highgarden, that's a possibility. I think he's probably going to get smoked a little bit later on down the line. He's not going to be a major player. We haven't seen enough of him, and we haven't made as big of a deal. I think he's going to be an ally to either Cersei and or Euron. I might have gotten ahead of myself there, but yeah, I think Highgarden's going to be sacked by Euron. He's also going to sack Dorne. That's two major things. He'll probably take a section of Daenerys' fleet with him, specifically the Greyjoys, the ones he's after. So moving forward, you know, I think that he also is going to be headed to King's Landing. He knows that's where Daenerys is headed. I'm sure in conquering Highgarden and Dorne, I'm sure he's going to find his way to King's Landing. That's her end game. He's after her. That's where we're going. Cersei is Mad Cersei, Mad Queen Cersei. I think that her relationship with Jaime is going to be a little bit more estranged, and I think that's going to be a deciding factor when Tyrion and Daenerys' fleet arrive in King's Landing. I think that, you know, that's going to be some issues. I think there's going to be some brother mutual plea for, you know, acceptance or surrender of both sides, and I don't think we're going to see that. I think by this point, Samwise is going to be finding some things in the Citadel and probably be heading north again. We know Sandor Clegane is going to be heading northwards as well with the Brotherhood of Banners. We know Melisandre's heading southwards, Arya's heading north, back home. So all the people are heading to where they're going to be for the season. Now, my major prediction for this is that Season 7 is going to be about this. It's going to be a way of how can we resolve most, if not almost all, of those political intrigues, because we're going to have 6 episodes to show the battle. Now, in addition to all of that stuff, they have to also continue Bran's story, who's trying to make it south of the Wall. We have to continue the story about Jon Snow, who is, you know, King of the North now, and the obvious tension that's causing between him and Sansa Stark, or at least on Sansa's side, who also has to contend with Littlefinger, who's up there obviously not happy that Jon Snow is King of the North. Jon Snow could give no fucks about the war in the South and everybody. He just wants to make sure everybody knows and is prepared for the actual fight that's coming. I think that between Sam and Bran and his warging and his abilities as Greenseer is going to be sharing with Jon a little bit more. Bran becomes the Three-Eyed Raven and is going to refine his powers of being able to communicate, which is the biggest thing, is communication here, I think. And between Bran and Sam and the Crypts of Winterfell, if Jon finds out who he is, assuming that he is Rhaegar Targaryen and Lyanna Stark's son, then the evidence of that is going to be in the Crypts of Winterfell, probably in the Citadel. You know, we'll probably find Rhaegar's heart, a wedding cloak of some type, maybe records in the Citadel, you know, a wedding cloak in Lyanna's tomb with Rhaegar's heart, you know, backed up by Bran's visions and Sam's findings in the Citadel. That may be enough. There's also 2 other distinct possibilities here in my mind. So, you know, again, where I go heavy on my tinfoil, but to me, I look at other possibilities as well, and at least in the books, there's other possibilities. Now, there's possibility 1 is, you know, he may never find out. That may be the bittersweet part of this. You know, by the time, you know, all of the players are there, by the time that he finds out, you know, who he really is and whatnot, at this point it doesn't really matter. I mean, the end of the winter's already here. So, I mean, any squabbles or any kind of benefits or negativities or, you know, pros and cons that comes with that knowledge is kind of moot at this point. It's going to have to wait. You know what I mean? If anything, my suspicion is that that's going to probably cause some kinds of other tensions, you know, depending on the outcomes of their different political intrigues. You know, that may cause more friction than necessary at this point in time, say with like Varys, who's seeking a Targaryen, you know, he's either seeking Targaryen reascension to the throne, obviously with Daenerys, or, you know, when he finds out Jon Snow may be a secret Targaryen, then, you know, who knows how that's going to affect things. But again, in my mind, I don't think that's going to really matter much to Jon, and if that is the case with so much of the material, you know, it may not be as big a reveal. I don't know. The showgoers are a different breed. In the books, on the other hand, things haven't exactly taken place the way that they have in the show in a lot of different ways. Some of them pretty significant so far. I'm not really going to go into it too much. Like I said, I just want to look at Season 7 predictions for the most part. But, you know, there is that whole ice dragon thing. Heard about it, we all wanted to see it. It's there. Something that's kind of exciting for me is both the shows and the books have mentioned ice spiders. I would like to see the ice spiders. Not because I particularly care about spiders. I fucking hate them. I do. Everybody who knows me for 5 minutes knows that's true. But really, I mean, we've seen the giants. We've seen the others riding, you know, various things. From what looks like monstrous camel type things and horses. I mean, the sons of Craster, the 12 that you see in the show, what are 99 in the books, you know, and the knights behind the Night King, when they show up outside of his thing, you know, they're riding horses. I don't think we'll see the ice spiders. I wish we would. If they are, they're, you know, I doubt they'll be of any kind of scale as the book describes them. But, you know, probably not Kong spiders, although I wish. That would be crazy. Maybe like, I don't know. There's a movie with some kind of an analog size there, probably about the size of a small dog or a hound. At least that's what, you know, at least some of the book describes them as the size of hounds, but then other parts of the books also describe the others as having riding ice spiders. So it's pretty big, unless you got Tyrion, you know, imp others, which I doubt, but you never know. Going back to the whole Craster's son thing, something that, you know, both the showgoers, if you only watch the shows, this won't make sense to you, but Baby Sam is named Monster in the book, so they call him Monster, you know, and he's part of the 100 sons that Craster sacrifices and gives up to the others in return for immunity. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to mention about that. Number one, the others don't take firstborn sons from just anywhere. I mean, look at all the different wildling villages scattered across north of the wall. And yet, the only place they go is Craster's, and they get his sons. Now, also, and related, the wildlings and the men of Castle Black, and, you know, people who've met the guy, everybody generally agrees, you know, Craster's a bit of a gross motherfucker. I mean, G.R. Mormont is noted as having said, you know, he worships darker gods than anybody else with some more messed up things. If you're familiar at all with the Craster, he has 19 daughters, granddaughter wives, and he keeps his bloodline pure through incest, and all of the daughters later on, you know, subsequently become more breeding grounds for him, and it's pretty abusive towards them. And his sons, on the other hand, are sacrificed, given away to the others. In between the times that he doesn't have sons, he gives sheep, you know, when they come looking. But again, it's a matter of a pact, a matter of a bargain. And I would imagine that with as many wildlings that don't really give a shit about each other, as gross and as nasty as all people find Craster to be, still nobody touches him. At least nobody north of the wall. So, though they despise him, find him grotesque and everything else, they also recognize his relevance because, again, within the realm of Craster's Keep, there are no attacks from the White Walkers, generally speaking, not so. So, what did all of that have to do with Baby Sam? Well, Baby Sam was born to Gilly, and Gilly is one of Craster's daughters, and Baby Sam is the next in line. They seem to be hunting that baby. They're coming for that child if they don't bring him back. It's a possibility that Sam discovers this in the Citadel, and that's the reason why he and Gilly and Baby Sam start heading back north towards the wall. Of course, they're going to run into all types of interference, probably including a run-in with his father, Randall Tarley. Again, my suggestion is, or my prediction, I also suggest that, he finds unlikely allies in either Cersei or Euron Greyjoy. He's probably part of the sack of High Garden. He's probably gonna give some fucking flack to his son if he runs across that way. I'm sure Sam's not a dumb kid. He took off with the sword. I'm sure he knows to avoid his dad, but this is Game of Thrones. Any shit can happen. So, again, we go back to, I don't think that we're really going to delve too much into that, if at all, into Season 7. We'll probably see it later into Season 8. Insofar as the others are concerned, we'll probably have a couple more what the fuck moments. I doubt we'll find out much more until Season 8, maybe in this season, about the man that Leaf and the Wild Children of the Forest had turned into the first other, at least as far as the show is concerned. And there's still no backstory on that guy. He's basically, it's in there. There's a lot of theories. He could be a Stark. He could be any number of things. He could have been a Green Seer. My money is he was a Stark. My money is nobody knows exactly who he is, but if you believe in hierarchy, okay, let's think about this for a minute, for half a second here. If you think about the Night King, if you think about this in video game terms even, ironically, consider a hierarchy of zombies to turned and pureborns, let's example, okay? And you'll find analogs to this in vampire movies, such as Blade, and pretty much any vampire movie, actually, now that I think about it. The Night King has the ability to turn dead people and dead animals and dead creatures and reanimate them into whites, okay, zombies of the story. And the whites are basically reanimated corpses. And they function basically like a zombie, pretty mindless, and they don't seem to have any particular special abilities other than being able to fucking run off of cliffs and just kind of keep on going like mad undead energized bunnies. Undead would be a good example of a good word, a blanket word. Now let's consider what happens after, what happens otherwise. What happens to a living one? Well, we've seen that, at least we've seen in the show that at least one individual was sacrificed or otherwise used in some type of ritual against a werewood tree by the Children of the Forest, to which Dragonglass is put through his chest, and in my opinion, I think pierced in to the werewoods. I have my own theories about werewoods. I'm not going to go too deep into it, but basically, I think that the Night King was turned, and I think that he has obviously some types of powers that the others don't seem to be able to handle, or possess, not handle, excuse me. Now, having said that, the Night King is able to reanimate corpses. He's also able to transfer some type of power to, we've seen this at least once in the show, to an unborn, or a newborn Craster's son. And you see the son is still alive, another. And he's able to do this at some type of altar in the heart of winter, without sacrificing any blood, or without obsidian / dragonglass, just call it what it is. He's able to do that without that, and so You know, who knows what that is. That may be one of the 12, 13. He would have been the next one in line for the others that we see that do, in fact, command the whites, so to speak. And I believe those ones are Craster's sons. That's the 99 in the books, and that's those 12 guys we see behind him. I believe Jon Snow had slain one of Craster's sons. Now, here's some funky stuff that I haven't seen anybody talk about yet on any video, as well as in any theory whatsoever, that I know of. If Craster's sons are turned, and they were still living beings with blood in them, then they, through some process, grow into these commanders, these guys, these White Walkers themselves. But when Jon Snow slays the ones that won there with the Valyrian steel blade, he cuts through him, but yet all of his chunks come through as ice. So, what happens to the natural blood of the body? Is it just a consequence of living human-born creatures with certain features that get turned by the Night King and their blood just like disappears, or what? But there weren't bloody chunks, so it wasn't a human. But like I said, there's a little inconsistency there, because clearly these guys seem to be the ones that the Night King turns from some living, or, you know, some ritualized version of, you know, taking possession or creating something that wasn't necessarily dead to begin with. So if that's the case, then what do they become so that the blood that used to be there isn't there anymore? Are they able to die and, you know, keep on going, and that blood has long been gone, or what? But whatever the Night King is creating, you know, it involves, you know, the living, as opposed to just simply turning them. Now, how is that relevant? Well, a couple of things. Here's my good prediction for Season 7, and by good, I talk about the fight against the others. The good news is that I think Sam is going to figure out the correlation between dragonglass and steel, and realize that the secret to making Valyrian steel is to add dragonglass to it. As a blade guy for my entire life, as knowing a little bit about steels and compositions, and having studied the matter pretty intensely and extensively my whole life, I can tell you that they can create super steels nowadays. Modern steels are created, they call them super steels, by taking basic steels of various types. Steel is by and large iron, 99% iron, and 0.1 to 0.01, you know, somewhere 0.1 or 0.2% carbon. That's what steel is. Now, a super steel, or a steel that's purposed, will incorporate other elements. Nowadays, you know, in the real world analog, we use vanadium, manganese, tungsten carbides, molybdenum. You know, there's things that we can add, like additives. If you think about it like cooking, you're adding other ingredients to the steel that enhance certain properties. For example, adding chromium to carbon steel increases its rust and corrosion and oxidation resistance, creating stainless steel. That's the basic rough outline of it. The trade-off, you know, for its stainlessness is the steel loses a little bit of its hardness, or some of its properties, which allow it to, not hardness, but some of its properties, in order to hold an edge a little bit longer. In general, some stainless steels take longer than others to deteriorate, and generally, high carbon steels hold a keener edge. Chromium tends to soften it just a little bit, or make it a little bit more difficult to sharpen. But I think you get the general idea of what I'm saying. You want to make a better cake, you add different ingredients. So I think the basic idea is that dragonglass mixed in with steels at certain temperatures, maybe with dragon fire, equals Valyrian Steel. In my mind, it's never been much of a mystery. I figured that one out, or at least I've been theorizing about that pretty much since the concept of Dragonglass came up, and I was like, oh, Valyrian Steel, oh, these ones work and this works, what's the correlation? Well, guys, it's simple. So, but it's not so simple for the Smiths of Westeros, so that's where Gendry coming back into the picture in Season 7 is going to be a big help. So we can definitely arm the people of King's Landing and Westeros for the fight against the others. However, is that going to work against the Night King? Again, I go back to my video game analog. The Night King's been around for a long time. He has access to powers that the other White Walkers and the Whites alone, don't have. He had, I don't know if it was a consequence of the weirwood or the specific way in which he was turned by the Children of the Forest. Maybe they never did it that way again. Maybe they gave him certain powers, and maybe he acquired them. But again, one of those things, it's going to be a big-ass what-the-fuck moment, and I think we're going to see it, is the assumption that the conventional way to slay the White Walkers is going to work on all of them. I don't think it's going to work as simply on the Night King as it does on the White Walker, or even just basic whites. We've seen him cut through fire. We've seen him walk through fire. I don't think that simple fire that would kill whites are just going to work on the Night's King. I think it's going to be Dragon's Fire. It's going to have to be. I think they're going to figure that out. I think it's not going to work quite the same way. We may even see someone go up literally against him, a character we know and love, maybe Thoros Emir, maybe Beric Dondarrion, maybe even Sandor Clegane. We'll see them on that ranging party. Somebody may go up against him, and we're going to lose a major character in an epic fashion, where we find that the Night King is a bit of an exception to the rule. So even though we get the ability to make Valyrian Steel blades, maybe it doesn't matter much in the end. It'll matter for everything else, though. Now, the bigger question becomes, if you can't slay him, but he can slay you, well, is that a liability? Yeah. One of the biggest things to consider is that Stannis Baratheon himself already said, he's able to, and Jon Snow's seen it, he can reanimate all corpses. That's how he's going to get an Ice Dragon, guys. That's my thoughts. He's going to slay one of the dragons, probably Viserion, and he's probably going to reanimate it. My question in my head last night was, do Ice Dragons breathe Sub-Zero Arctic freeze, like ice, like an ice breath, or would it breathe blue fire that burns? I would say, and let me know in the comment section if you guys are still watching this, what you think. I think Ice Dragons blow like a Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat kind of shit, where they just kind of blow through it and it just instantly freezes anything, and that's how you're going to have, and it makes sense, that's how one dragon's going to have to fight the other two. I don't think it's Drogon that's going to die, but it could be, but I doubt it. I think it's going to be like Viserion. It would be a weird justice since, Daenerys' brother Viserys died, so Viserion and Viserys died, sure. In my head, it makes sense. Don't quote me on it. Like I said, it's just a call ahead of time. I'm wrong as often as I'm right. But that's how he's going to do it. I think that's going to be a part of how the wall comes down. We see in the teaser picture with the Night's King on the dragon, he's sitting on an icy hill, but for all we know, guys, that could be the top of the wall. The walls may not come down as we think, but a big section of it may. It's probably going to happen at Castle Black, since we've had 6 seasons of Castle Black to be invested in, as well as characters that we have emotional ties to. Lord Commander Ed now, in place of Jon Snow. Don't knock it. I think it's going to happen. I think Lord Commander is going to die. I believe everybody in Castle Black is going to die and be reanimated and become part of the Night's King army. Same thing for Thoros Emir or Beric Dondarrion. I think are some of these major characters that we just don't see them having like this major end game. If they survive, what would they gain from it? What were their major losses? I'm looking at those guys and going, who have we emotionally invested in, and who are we prepared to see on the other side of the battlefield again? We're going to see Ed. We're going to see every member of the Night's Watch. We're going to see that lady, you know, and a lot of the people we saw from Hardhome. We may see, you know, we're going to see a lot of reanimated, recently dead people up there, and they're going to be on the Night King's side, and that's going to make some conflicting battles, because that's George R.R. Martin, because that's Game of Thrones, because that's the very nature of this fucking show, you guys. And that's it. I think the Night King's really going to win this round. That's probably going to be, if not the last episode, like the last scene we see him on that dragon and everybody rising, and that's it. It's dun dun dun. So season 7 is going to be about wrapping up all of the political intrigue. Who's going to be left standing? Who's going to take King's Landing? In the end, is it going to matter? Who's going to prevail? Who's going to get sacked? Who's going to make an alliance with who? And then at the end, you know, the fight's going to be there, and they have 7 episodes to figure out who's going to live, who's going to die, because season 8 is when we're going to get the fight against the others. We have 6 episodes, and that's where we're really going to get the answers to some of those questions I threw out there, or at least the ones that are in my head. But that's my major prediction for season 7. It's all going to be about wrapping up these ties, wrapping up the actual Game of Thrones, so that when the actual winter's already here, so that when the fight comes, you know, and we find out what the others are all about, what the White Walkers want, you know, what is the Night King's endgame, how did he get there, who was that fucking dude, how come only certain people get reanimated with a mental capacity after death. Example, the lady that we see at Hardhome, I forget what her name is, you know, we see her die, and then we see her as part of the army that gets reanimated. They don't seem to have much of a mind of their own. No White in the show does. Benjen Stark, on the other hand, dies and gets brought back, supposedly, according to him, by the Children of the Forest, or the others, or something, and he's now become the show's version of, you know, Cold Hands, but whatever. And he's turned, but yet he has enough mental capacity to still be able to save Bran and Mira after his resurrection. He's a Stark. Starks have different blood, you know. They have different abilities past their point. Interestingly, also, even though we haven't seen it, Benjen can still communicate verbally. We haven't seen any White Walkers or Whites actually verbally communicate with anybody yet. The books describe the sound, and the show you can hear it as kind of a shrill cry that sounds like ice breaking on ice shattering, or ice cracking on a lake. That doesn't mean they don't know how to talk, just because we haven't seen it. But the only one we have seen is Benjen Stark. That doesn't mean that the Night's King can't either. I think that he can. I suspect that he can. He could before, and he seems to have many abilities well beyond the rest of the Whites. The White Walkers, Sons of Craster, may be able to do it, but again, without having been taught the tongue and taken as infants, I doubt it. So again, it's kind of curious. Season 8 will answer those questions for me. That's my thoughts on the matter. Let me know what your thoughts are on the matter. I am going to get back to playing this game, but I kind of wanted to throw some random ideas out there. Like I said, I don't know what really to talk about when the girls go to bed, and I still like to game, and I still like to share. So if you guys have any ideas for topics or anything you guys would, you know, better than hearing just silence sometimes, or having a sounding board is kind of nice. Give me some ideas, and if you have any thoughts on my thoughts on Season 7, or any thoughts of your own that I haven't thought of, or I just want to talk about it. So yeah, throw out your ideas and let me hear what your thoughts are, so give me some kind of things to think about. Maybe you have ideas I haven't thought of yet, and we'll just open up. That's half the fun of Game of Thrones for me. Just because I'm not contending for the throne doesn't mean I can't play a game with it. And it's always fun to see who comes out on top. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.